Have you not heard? Has it not been told? There is a story of old.
Archbishop Dominiquae Bierman has traveled the world for over 3 decades proclaiming the gospel from Zion to the nations with miracles following. She exposes the false doctrines of replacement theology and preaches restoration to the Jewish Messiah, Yeshua HaMashiach.
That a lion has defeated a dragon. A lion has defeated a dragon. A lion has defeated a dragon. The Lion of Judah has defeated the dragon.
Hallelujah, hallelujah. Today we're going to speak about Sarah, the mother of the nations. In fact, all of the promise of Abraham, the promise that Elohim gave to Abraham, is fulfilled in Sarah. Had it not been for her, then Israel would have not been born. In other words, she is the womb for the fulfillment of the promise, and the name Sarah itself denotes a personality of high hierarchy, a minister, a princess, a royal. That is Sarah. Now we are standing here between Jerusalem, Hebron, and Bethlehem at a crossroads that have everything to do with the fulfillment of the promise given to Abraham. And we're going to read now and follow the life of Sarah and get to know this remarkable woman. Genesis 15:18 tells us, on that day, Yahveh made a covenant with Abraham, saying, to your descendants I have given this land, from the river of Egypt as far as the great river, the river Euphrates. Now this is the promise that Yahveh will give to the descendants of Abraham the entire land, all the way from the river of Egypt, which would be the Nile, to the river Euphrates in Iraq. But Abraham could not fulfill that promise, not without Sarah. He needed a womb to be able to bring the promise forth. I've spoken in past episodes that the word womb in Hebrew is rechem, and that the word mercy or compassion is rachamim, a multiplicity of wombs. And we can see that Yahveh fulfills his promises through a multiplicity of wombs, of women that have enough mercy, enough compassion, and enough faith to flow in it to be able to bring forth the promises of God into reality. So, we're going to keep on reading some more about Abraham and Sarah and discover the lady. Genesis 3:14-15 says, Yahveh God said to the serpent, because you have done this, cursed are you more than all cattle and more than every beast of the field. On your belly you will go, and dust you will eat all the days of your life. And I will put an enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He shall bruise you on the head, and you shall bruise him on the heel. Well, we can see here that from the beginning, there was an issue in the world. The issue was sin. Satan enticed the woman to sin. And then her husband got tempted as well and didn't correct her. And we can see that all of mankind fell. But Yahveh had already, Elohim, the God of Israel, that eventually will be called the God of Israel, had a plan. And the plan needed to be fulfilled through a woman. And so we're going to see that that plan of fulfillment through a woman will run all the way through certain women, Sarah being the beginning of that womb that will bring forth the promise of crushing the head of the snake through the seed of the woman. And the seed of the woman eventually becomes Isaac, and eventually becomes Jacob, and eventually becomes the 12 tribes of Israel. Within those 12 tribes, the tribe of Judah, out of which the Messiah, the Jewish Messiah, Yeshua, would be born. So Sarah, though we see her being, coming into the scene in the book of Genesis, from chapter 13 and on, actually 12 and on, we already know that she's there. However, it is already from the beginning, from Genesis 3, from the beginning of the fall, that the promise that there would be a womb that would have a seed that would crush the head of the snake already was prophesied and declared. So, she is the womb that actually birthed the people of Israel. Without her, I definitely would have not been born. Now let's take a look at the whole thing in order. In Genesis 17, 15 to 16, says, Then Elohim said to Abraham already, his name had changed, As for Sarai, your wife, you shall not call her name Sarai, but Sarah shall be her name. I will bless her, and indeed I will give you a son by her. Then I will bless her, and she shall be a mother of nations. Kings of peoples will come from her. Notice that she's not only the mother of one nation, which is the mother of Israel, but mother of nations, because we know that the promise will be eventually fulfilled through a very special act of Yah, where he scattered the 10 tribes of Israel, the northern kingdom, and they get mixed among the nations, and out of them come princes and kings and rulers, even until this day. And also because through the Jewish Messiah, then in that sense Sarah would become also the mother by faith of many Gentile nations, many Gentile people that will come and believe in a Jewish Messiah for their salvation. And so she would become the mother of kings and of rulers and of nations. Hallelujah. Now in Genesis 11, 29 to 34, we learned something about Sarah that impacted her life, and it impacted the life of all of our mothers. 3 of the 4 mothers of Israel were impacted by the fact that they were barren, and that the children brought forth from them would have been children of miracles, children of promise. In Genesis 11, 29 to 30, Abram, that's before his name changes to Abram, and Nahor took wives for themselves. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife was Milcah and Iscah. Sarai was unable to conceive. She did not have a child. Well, she did not have a child. That bothered her and bothered her. Like eventually we're going to see that it bothers Rebecca, and it bothers Rachel. It bothers all the 3 of our mothers. For them to conceive was actually the ultimate fulfillment of their lives. The thing is that it's not because women are only good for giving birth to children, as many of the church fathers said in the past, that women are good for nothing but to give birth to children and keep house, which is one of the reasons why we're doing this series, to debunk the fact that, women cannot do anything else. That's not the reason why our mothers were so upset that they couldn't conceive. It's because they knew prophetically that the seed of the promise would be born through them, so that the promise in Genesis 3 would be fulfilled, so that the promise to Abram would be fulfilled. They may have not known it cognizantly, but they knew it in their spirit, that for them to conceive meant the fulfillment of the promise. Hallelujah.
I hope you're enjoying this program about the powerful women of the Bible. Actually, I had a problem with women in leadership, and I wrote a book to help you. I invite you to get my book, The Women Factor, and be set free.
I am immovable in you, unshakable in you, and I am full of grace. I am immovable in you, unshakable in you, and I am full of faith.
Now we're going to see now what happens with these 2. They're living in Haran. But they're living in Haran simply because they stopped midway. Because at some point God had already told the father of Abraham, Terach, to leave Ur Kasdim, which is Ur of the Chaldeans in Assyria, and to go to Canaan. But they stopped halfway in Haran, kind of a compromise place, because they felt comfortable there. Now, we need to realize something, though, very important, is that often it happens in our lives that Yah tells us to do something and we stop midway. We get tired, we get comfortable, we go into that comfort zone, we think that that's enough, we get fatigued, and then we stop midway. But then that's exactly what happened to Terach and his children, Nahor and Abram. And at some point, Yahveh wanted them to continue their journey, so he came to the second generation, to Abram, and he says this. He says, get out. We're going to see first in Genesis 12:5. It says, Abram took his wife Sarai and his nephew Lot and all their possessions which they had accumulated. Where? In Haran, the comfortable place, and the people which they had acquired in Haran, and they set out for the land of Canaan, so they came to the land of Canaan. Here we are. And then it says in verse 11 to 17, it came about when he was approaching Egypt. Now, this is the point. Abram now feels clearly that there is a call to continue on to Canaan. Who does he take with him? He takes Sarai, that eventually becomes Sarah, which means the royal princess, the minister, and Lot, his nephew, and they go on to Canaan. But there are setbacks in the way, and this is the place where we begin to see the character of Sarah, as she is actually a woman of faith and great inner strength. Take a look. It came about when he was approaching Egypt that he said to his wife Sarai, see now, I know that you're a beautiful woman. So now we know she's beautiful, not only barren, but also beautiful. And when the Egyptians see you, they will say, this is his wife. And they will kill me, but they will let you live. Please say that you are my sister, so that it may go well for me because of you, and that I may live on account of you. Now it came about when Abram entered Egypt that the Egyptians saw that the woman was very beautiful. Pharaoh's officials saw her and praised her to Pharaoh and to the woman who was taken into Pharaoh's house. Therefore, he treated Abram well for her. Exactly what Abram said that he would do. He was treated well. But she went without complaint even. That's what's amazing to me. I don't know what I would have done. I don't know what you would have done in a situation like this. But she went without complaint. And therefore, he treated Abram well for her sake, and he gave him sheep, oxen, male donkeys, male servants, and female servants. Wow, female donkeys and camels. He wasn't rich, now became richer. But Yahveh struck Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai, Abraham's wife. Hey, we can see one thing here. We can see that Abram, well, he was kind of scared. But his wife was more courageous than he was, because she just simply took it. She trusted that the God of Abraham, the one that called them to leave Haran and to leave Ur of Chaldees and to go to Canaan, the same one will also protect her. So she wasn't barren only. She wasn't only barren, she was beautiful and she was courageous. She was a woman full of faith. And I tell you that at every time we're going to see throughout the scriptures that Elohim always vindicated Sarah against all of her enemies, against all of her setbacks and all of her circumstances. He protected his vessel that would become the mother of nations, the mother of Israel and the mother of nations. In Genesis 20 verse 2 we see again the same thing when they come to the land of Abimelech, who is the land of the Philistines. So not only in Egypt, but now they keep on moving within Canaan, and they come to the land of the Philistines. And Abraham said of his wife Sarah, she is my sister. So Abimelech, king of Gerar, sent men and took Sarah. You see, again, he does the same thing again and again and again to protect himself. He sends his wife before him so that it will be well with him. So we can see that's not exactly a badge of honor for Abraham at this point. And unfortunately, that thing keeps on repeated also in Isaac and Jacob again, when they sent their wives before them and they put them in jeopardy rather than them being in jeopardy. And that's not really a badge of honor, but it is a badge of honor for Sarah that she took it with great courage and that she remained faithful to Elohim, and Elohim vindicated her. In this case with Abimelech, we can see again the same thing happened. Elohim vindicates her, and the women in Abimelech's house cannot bear children anymore because of the curse that comes upon them. And finally, well, Abimelech releases Sarah to Abraham back again and gives him a lot of trophy together with it. So Abraham keeps on getting richer and richer because of his beautiful wife. And Yahveh keeps on protecting this beautiful wife. Now, when we say beautiful wife, we would imagine somebody in her 20s or in her 30s, but no, no, no. When she leaves Haran with Abraham, she's about 65 years old. Can you imagine? She was about 65 years old, and she was still coveted by men because she was so absolutely gorgeous and such a beautiful lady. So ladies out there, if you are 60 or 61 or 62 or 65, even 70, please stop thinking that you cannot be beautiful at that age or you cannot be vibrant at that age, because you can. Our mothers were, and especially Sarah was. So let's take a look at some more things here. We see that she didn't have children, of course, you know, and so she cries out to the father for children. And at some point, Elohim wants to give her a child, but not yet. First, her faith is tested. Abraham's faith is tested, and so she wanted a child so bad because she knew that the purposes of God would only be fulfilled if she bears a child. So she was even willing to give Hagar, who is the handmaid of Sarai, Egyptian handmaid, into the arms of Abraham so that he will sire a child or a son by this handmaid. I know in our society we cannot grasp this, but she did. She went to Abraham and said, "Hey, Abraham, let me give you my handmaid," because in that culture, the handmaiden was her property. So whatever child that would come out of the, of the handmaid would be the child of Sarah. She tried to figure out how she would fulfill the promise given to Abraham with her own mind. And I'm going to say that again to every one of you, both men and women. Anytime that you try to figure out how the promise is going to be fulfilled, you're going to birth something that was not necessarily appointed. It can turn for good, but it's not necessarily appointed. In this case, this is what Sarah does. She, in Genesis 16, verse 1, 2, 5, and 6, we're going to read. Now Sarai, Abraham's wife, had not borne him a child, but she had an Egyptian slave woman whose name was Hagar. So Sarai said to Abraham, "See now, the Lord Yahveh has prevented me from bearing children. Please have relations with my slave woman. Perhaps I will obtain children through her." And Abraham listened to the voice of Sarai. Sarah convinces Abraham to take that handmaid and to lie with her. But what happens is that this handmaiden, once she becomes pregnant, she begins to get prideful. And she becomes she gets up on her lady. Now she's the slave and the lady is the master, and she begins to kind of chide her, and she begins to feel like she is Sarah. She begins to usurp her place. So Sarah was really upset about it, and it was the wrong thing for Hagar to do. But she got conceited because Abraham lay with her, and because not only that, but now she apparently was more important than Sarah because she had a child in her womb. Now, that also goes for the issues of jealousy. How important it is that even when Yah maybe uses us to help someone else, that we will not get jealous or we will not get prideful, because then if not, then judgment can fall upon us. Well, in this case, Sarah got really upset, and we can see again that Abraham actually does listen to his wife. He listened to her to go into Hagar, but not only did he listen here, he also listens here. Look at this one. It says this. Sarai comes and she said, so Sarai said to Abraham, "May the wrong done to me be upon you," the wrong that she's now getting prideful against me. I put my slave woman into your arms, but when she saw that she had conceived, I was insignificant in her sight. May Yahveh judge between you and me. Wow. But Abram said to Sarai, look, your slave woman is in your power. Do to her what is good in your sight. So Sarai treated her harshly, and she fled from her presence. Well, we can see here that Abram listened to her on both events. And Sarah was so sure that what Hagar was doing was wrong and that Yahveh would actually vindicate her, that he said, let Yahveh judge between her and I. The thing is that when Ishmael is born, Ishmael is not the son that carries the seed from Genesis 3 promised to Eve. Okay, that's not the seed of promise. That was a seed that came forth because Sarah tried to figure out how to do it, and she got tired of waiting. And that's something that's very important for all of us, that when Yah gives us a promise, beloved ones, do not get tired of waiting. So often I see people that they don't wait all the way to the end. They think, well, Yah missed it, or I'm getting too old, it's not my time. But I'm going to tell you something. If Yahveh promised something to you and you stay put obeying him, even though the wait may be long, he will keep his promise. In the case of Sarah, the wait was pretty long. It's not until she was 90. Imagine that she left Haran at the age of 65, and she was coveted at that age, even she looked beautiful, but now at the age of 90, when she loses her period, when there is no more relations between Abraham and Sarah, maybe the sparks were not there anymore. It was at that time that Yahveh chose to fulfill his promise. Because I'll tell you something, when he chooses to fulfill a promise, he will always make sure that everybody knows that it's him and not you. And so we can never figure him out. So let's get with the program. Genesis 18:12. When the angels come and tell Sarah, tell Abraham, there's these angels that come to talk about the birth of Isaac. They come to Abraham. They also talk about the judgment of Sodom and Gomorrah and all of that. But they talk about the birth of Isaac. And when Sarah hears that she will become pregnant and bear a child, she was 89 years old. It would be a year later when she would become 90. It says in Genesis 18:12, so Sarah laughed to herself. She didn't even laugh out loud. So Sarah laughed to herself, saying, after I become old, am I to have pleasure, my Lord being old also? Am I to have pleasure? In other words, can I enjoy him anymore as a wife would enjoy a husband? It's a lost case. It's a total lost case. I cannot enjoy him anymore. He's old. I'm old. I don't have my period. No way. So she laughed to herself, kind of like, ha, 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 ha. Really? I mean, it was funny. For her, it was funny, but not for Yah, because Yah wanted her to believe in the promise all the way to the end. Well, what's interesting is that Sarah lives 127 years. In other words, after she gives birth to Isaac, she lives still from 90 years old, right? She lives still 37 more years. In other words, she fulfilled the purpose for her life, and she fulfilled the promises given to Abraham by birthing Isaac, the promised son. Now, I want to say something about Islam. It's very important that we will understand about Sarah. Okay? Ishmael is the son of Hagar. That's another woman. But the one that was chosen to bring forth the promise of Abraham was Sarah. It's from her womb that Yahveh would give to Abraham his son. And it is from that womb that all the redemptive purposes of Yahveh for the world would come. It couldn't be from Hagar. And just like I speak a lot about replacement theology in Christianity, I also speak about replacement theology in Islam, whereabout Islam believes, and this is the lie that they've been eating for too long, is that Hagar is the mother of nations and that Ishmael is the son of the promise. That's why they are on the Temple Mount. But I want you to understand once and for all that Ishmael is not the son of promise, though there is a promise for Ishmael that there will be 12 princes coming out of him. And indeed, the Arab nations have become very strong and very blessed in many ways. But yet the promise of redemption goes through the womb of Sarah and her son Isaac, eventually Jacob and the 12 tribes of Israel. And so Sarah is the key. Sarah is the vessel. Sarah is the bridge. The woman needed to be strong to live 127 years in spite of being exposed to rape. Because when Abraham told her, say you're my sister, technically she was exposed to rape. In spite of being exposed to the fact that the promise never came to pass, in spite of the fact that she being human lost it in the middle, and she still, wanted to figure it out and bring the promise to pass by her own strength or devices, in this case her handmaid. In spite of all of that, Sarah fulfilled her promise and her purposes. And she had to overcome so many bizarre circumstances, it's not funny. And in 1 Peter 3:6 it says, just as Sarah obeyed Abraham, calling him Lord, and you have become her children, if you do what is right without being frightened by any fear. Women, we are called to be courageous. We are called to prevail. We are called to overcome bizarre circumstances. Believe me, I've had to overcome a lot of bizarre circumstances, and some people call me Mother of Nations as well, because my calling was from Israel to the nations, and to restore the gospel made in Zion, to carry in my womb the seed of that promise of restoration for all of the Gentiles, all of the nations, and all of the bride of Messiah to the original gospel made in Zion. That promise of restoration of Israel, all of it has been inside of my spiritual womb. And I've had to overcome a lot of bizarre circumstances, and yet we had to prevail. And just like Hebrews 11:11 says, by faith, even Sarah herself received the ability to conceive, even beyond the proper time of life, since she considered him faithful who had promised. And today, I consider him faithful who had promised, and I pray that you will too.
I love my wife's new album called Tribute to the Jew in You. I listen to it in the car all the time. You need to get it.
Do not delay your revival, Yahveh. Pour out your ruach like wine. Pour out your spirit like water, Adonai. Anoint your bride.
If you enjoyed today's program, support this broadcast by donating to kad-esh.org. To connect with us, write to info@kad-esh.org or mail to 52 Tuscan Way, Suite 202-412, St. Augustine, Florida, 32092, USA. Or call us at 1-972-301-7087. We'd love to hear from you. And join us again next week.
Anoint your bride. Anoint your bride. Anoint